It started the way millions of mornings start: a headache, a sore throat, a child complaining before school. Someone reaches for the medicine cabinet. In the autumn of 1982, that ordinary moment, that reflexive act of reaching for relief, became the last thing 7 people ever did. And over 40 years later, no one has ever been charged. It began before anyone knew it had begun. On the morning of September 28, 1982, a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman woke up in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, a quiet suburb northwest of Chicago. She had a sore throat, a mild cold. Her parents gave her what millions of parents had given their children without a second thought: an extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Within hours, Mary Kellerman was dead. The paramedics who responded had no answers. The doctors who examined her had no answers. The cause of death wasn't immediately clear. A 12-year-old girl, no underlying conditions, dead within hours of waking up. It would take another day and 5 more bodies before anyone started connecting the dots. On September 29th, the deaths came quickly. Adam Janus, 27 years old, a postal worker in Arlington Heights. He took Tylenol for chest pain and collapsed at home. He was pronounced dead that afternoon. That same evening, his family gathered at his house to grieve. His brother Stanley, 25, and Stanley's wife Teresa, 19, were there. Someone found the Tylenol bottle Adam had used. They each took a capsule. Both of them were dead within hours. 3 members of the same family, killed by the same bottle on the same day. Mary Rayner, 27, a new mother in Winfield recovering from childbirth. Mary McFarland, 31, a phone company employee in Lombard. Paula Prince, 35, a flight attendant in Chicago's Old Town neighborhood. 7 people, multiple locations, multiple stores, multiple bottles. This was not an accident. This was not a factory defect. Someone had done this deliberately. The person who first connected the deaths wasn't a detective. She was a nurse. Helen Jensen was Arlington Heights' only public health official. Called to investigate the Janus family deaths, she noticed something. She found a Tylenol bottle at the house, with a receipt showing it was purchased the same day Adam died. 6 pills were missing. She flagged it. She handed it over to investigators. When the bottles were tested, what came back confirmed the worst. The capsules had been opened. The acetaminophen inside had been removed. And in its place, potassium cyanide, a substance so lethal that a fraction of a teaspoon is enough to kill a person within minutes. Illinois Attorney General Ty Fauner assembled a task force overnight. Local police, state police, the FBI. By the following morning, they were receiving 300 to 400 tips a day. And the scope of what they were dealing with was becoming clear. The tampered bottles had come from different stores across the Chicago area: a Walgreens, a Jewel Foods, a Dominick's, an Osco Drug, multiple locations, multiple supply chains. The contamination hadn't happened at the factory. The bottles had come from different manufacturing batches, different facilities, which meant someone had gone store to store, shelf to shelf, and laced the capsules after they were already on sale. This was targeted, this was deliberate, and this was random. The victims hadn't known each other. They had no connection. They were simply people who reached for a bottle of Tylenol. The investigation that followed was one of the largest in American history at that time. Hundreds of agents, tens of thousands of pages of records, interviews with over 150 people. And yet, when from the beginning, the evidence had a frustrating quality. It pointed, but it never quite arrived. The physical evidence was examined carefully. The bottles themselves, the capsules, the cyanide. The contamination was precise, methodical. Whoever had done this knew what they were doing, and they had done it without leaving obvious traces. 3 suspects emerged over the course of the investigation. The first was Roger Arnold, a dock worker at a jewel warehouse who had been named as a tip in the early days of the investigation. When police searched his apartment, they found 5 guns, laboratory equipment, and books on poisons, including one that described how to produce potassium cyanide. He was brought in and questioned, but the evidence against him in connection to the Tylenol murders was circumstantial. He was ruled out. What happened next made the case darker still. 7 months after the murders, Arnold was charged with shooting and killing a man at a Chicago bar. He had believed the man was the one who had turned his name over to police in the Tylenol investigation. He was wrong. He had killed an innocent man. Arnold was sentenced to 30 years. He died in prison, but not as a Tylenol suspect. The second suspect was also ruled out and is now deceased, which leaves the third name, the one that has never gone away. On October 8, 1982, 9 days after the first deaths, the early editions of the Chicago Tribune and the Sun-Times broke a story. A letter had been sent to Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer of Tylenol. When confronted, Lewis admitted to sending the letter, but he claimed it was a hoax, that he had nothing to do with the actual murders. He said he intended only to direct suspicion elsewhere, toward his wife's former employer. He was convicted of extortion. He served 13 years. In 2007, advances in forensic technology allowed investigators to determine something new. The postmark on Lewis's letter was dated October 1st, 1982. If that timeline was accurate, Lewis had begun writing the letter before the deaths were even publicly connected to Tylenol. Before the public knew it was a poisoning case. Before anyone outside the investigation knew what had actually happened. When confronted with this, Lewis changed his story. In 2009, the Department of Justice reviewed the evidence. Court documents later revealed that investigators had concluded Lewis was responsible for the poisonings, but that they did not have enough evidence to charge him. In 2011, the FBI requested DNA samples from Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, after noting that his first 4 crimes had occurred in Chicago and that he had family connections to the area in 1982. Kaczynski denied any involvement. He was ruled out. Lewis, meanwhile, submitted DNA and fingerprints in 2010. He said he had nothing to worry about. In 2024, James Lewis was found dead at his home in suburban Boston. The primary suspect in the most consequential unsolved poisoning in American history died without ever being charged, without a trial, without a verdict. The case remains officially open. In the weeks following the deaths, Johnson & Johnson recalled over 31 million bottles of Tylenol from shelves across the United States, at a retail value of over $100 million. It was one of the largest product recalls in history. They didn't have to. There was no law requiring it. They did it anyway. The company's handling of the crisis is still studied in business schools today as a model of corporate responsibility in catastrophe. They were transparent. They were fast. They put public safety above profit. Tylenol, which had commanded nearly 40% of the over-the-counter painkiller market before the murders, eventually recovered that market share. But it took years. In 1983, Congress passed what became known as the Tylenol Bill, making it a federal felony to tamper with consumer products, with a maximum sentence of life in prison. By 1989, the FDA required tamper-evident packaging on all over-the-counter medications. Every foil seal you peel back, every shrink wrap you cut through, every safety ring you snap open before opening a bottle of anything. That is a direct consequence of what happened in Chicago in September 1982. Mary Kellerman, 12 years old, Adam Janus, 27, Stanley Janus, 25, Teresa Janus, 19, Mary Reiner, 27, Mary McFarland, 31, Paula Prince, 35, 7 people who took what they thought was medicine. 43 years later, the pills are still in evidence storage in Arlington Heights. The bottles, the boxes, the physical record of what happened is preserved, waiting. Illinois State Police investigators have said the case remains open. Tips are still being evaluated. Emerging forensic technology is still being considered. The Tylenol murders changed the way we package medicine. They changed federal law. They triggered a nationwide panic that reshaped how companies respond to crisis. They created an urban legend about Halloween candy that persists to this day. And yet, the most basic question of all remains unanswered. Who did it? Every case leaves something behind. This one left 7 names, a still open file, and a suspect who died before justice could reach him. The evidence is still there. The answer may be 2.